I'd like to call, is this working? I'd like to call to order this work study for the Cave Creek Unified School District. Today is Tuesday, April 22nd, and it is 6:07 p.m. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item 2.3, roll call. All members of the board are present. Members of the cabinet that are present are Dr. Jensen, Dr. Hendrickson, Dr. Pletnick, and Mr. Dolezal. Item 2.4, formal adoption of the agenda. Is there a motion?
So moved. Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Did you want to do something?
Shotgun, 3.2.
Okay. Let's go back to formal adoption of the agenda. Is there something you would like to pull out? 3.2. Okay, we will pull out 3.2, and where would you like to put it?
Wherever you would like.
Okay, we will put it after action consent. So let us re-vote on that. All in favor of the amended agenda, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. All right. Item 3, action consent. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
There has to be a motion.
Oh, I'm sorry. We need a motion for second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Okay. Sorry about that. All right. Item 3.2, the human resources item presented by Dr. Hendrickson.
President Busby moved that governing board approve the HR items as presented.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right.
Aye.
No. You.
So just a quick question, because obviously some of this came more from parents, so just like to be a format. With 27 total resignations on the docket here, some of them being at Cactus Shadows and impacting certain arts, so on. There's been a lot of conversation. So just wondering, what's the plan? What are the impacts by this kind of level of resignations as we head into the new year? Obviously, parents concerned, etc. So. Resignations. Transfers, they all come.
Yeah, Member Moore, as we kind of look at our current count of resignation of where we currently see it, we're pretty much on par where what the normal is. When we look at all the teachers that wanted to return to us and were transferred to either Black Mountain, Horseshoe Trails, or Desert Willow, all those teachers have been placed, so we're very happy about that. We don't see an uptick in any particular area. In fact, where we're seeing less of a resignation, less of a cut is in our special ed, especially at our high school and middle school level. Sometimes our SPED numbers take a hit there. We do have a few outstanding SPED positions that we're looking to fill, but we're also being able to absorb those with attrition where we're not going to need to fill them. So I can make sure in the board update I can give you kind of an overall analysis. We're waiting for contracts to come out or to be returned. That deadline is May 6th, so that gives us our most clear picture of what our teacher loss is right now. So.
Do you foresee any major impact of losing some of these teachers? Oh, sorry. Thank you. Do you see any impact when losing some of these teachers, like Mr. L, who does Imprints of Honor? You've got, obviously, Mr. Cupo moving to middle school full-time. So there are some things that have created some questions to some of the things that do make us unique.
Yeah, absolutely. I think anytime you're losing not only that institutional knowledge of an individual who's been at a site for a long time, that's a void that you have to fill, but then also making sure you're finding someone specialized in that area of expertise. And so we work with our principals, we work with our Allison, who does all of our marketing to kind of get the word out there. I know with different organizations that we work with, making sure that we're marketing through them and whatnot. So definitely, some of them are a little more unique that are going to be harder to fill, and so we just need to be as aggressive as possible to try to find them and try to find people of interest, especially as we are shrinking, especially at the high school. where you may not need a full-time position. It may only be a 0.8 or a 0.6 position. How can we make that attractive to someone by combining it with a similar position? I don't want someone teaching math and then teaching band at the same time, but if they're teaching theater and they're teaching video production, that in my mind has some connection. I don't know if Mr. Koopa and the theater expert would agree, but where there's a connection, how can we kind of combine full-time positions for these individuals that makes it more attractive to them?
Just to follow up on that, what is at the point, I would think a 0.8 would still qualify for full benefits where a 0.6 does not. Is that kind of the...
Correct, yeah. So 30 hours a week, which is going to be at your 0.8, is benefits eligible. And so you have some people that are not worried about the benefits, some people that want to make sure they get state retirement. And so you have to do, it's 20 hours a week for at least 20 weeks. You get ASRS. Some individuals are fine with a 0.5. They're not worried about the benefits. They want the state retirement.
So with that, do we do a posting just part-time, or is there a way to post a full-time position? Because maybe they make that up. Like you said, maybe it's not film, maybe they teach an English class or something.
Yeah. So we'll do a couple different things. Sometimes we just have to post it if we don't believe that it has a combination, or we'll put for instance, the middle school needs a math/STEM position, so that's how it's going to be posted, as a math/STEM. Sometimes we'll find individuals that will apply for a position. When we call them up, we say, hey, we also have this if you're looking for more full-time. Sometimes we'll just pull a position and repost it with a combination to see if that kind of jumps out at anyone.
And I'm assuming if you don't find a candidate, you have contingency plans to make sure programs don't suffer through the...
Yeah, we work closely with Dr. Jensen and Vicki in our IT department to find out what is the second choice of our students, what is the third choice. Obviously, we are trying to honor student choices and push them into having a variety of course offerings, things like that, but working with our administrators to make sure that, if we're not able to fill, where can we push those kids into? Some classes are more popular than others. I'll tell you, the middle school art is booming. We're not going to be able to get all of our kids in art. So how do you find ways that it still honors the student choice, but also works within our restrictions of what our staffing is?
I think you're...
Well, and also just as there's hard to fill positions and things like that where we've had to outsource or go out to companies that are paying, ultimately, again, to remain that comprehensive high school, we have to do other things. So there are other contingency plans if we have to go down that road of specialty hiring and things like that as well. So I think that's what you were asking in terms of...
I was thinking maybe not even that. There's some kids we can't push into something else, and I'll use my son for example. He's halfway through an IB, which is a 2-year theater program, or his Seal of Fine Arts. He has to have the 4th year of Fine Arts. So I think there's specific kids that you can't push them into an alternate because you leave them hanging halfway through a program.
Correct, yes, absolutely. Member Walker and I know Dr. Jensen is working closely with Mrs. Thomas to find out with some of those positions, what are the additional trainings in order to get that certification. So we're not leaving our students hanging. And it sounds like right now we feel like she I think expressed to you, we feel like we're in good shape with that we're not going to, kids get to the end and all of a sudden we can't make that IB diploma. So, yeah. Okay.
Any other questions?
I'm good.
I think just maybe for clarification on that, because as I was going through the HR, I noticed some of them are listed differently for if they were transfers, and I think it probably has to do maybe what bucket they fall into, for lack of better words, only because I saw resignation like from our gifted teacher, but then pages down the line I found her as a full-time position at Black Mountain, where some of them were transfers, but that one showed as like a resignation and then a completely new hire. So I think those, I don't know if there was very many that way, but it was listed a little bit different in certain things versus just straight resignations and those that just transferred with the combination of closing schools.
Yeah, Member Walker, I'll double check that. So we do have some individuals that submit their resignation, so that gets on the board, and then they decide to return, and so we got to make sure or do our best to catch up. So I'll double check that for sure.
That's mostly just to make the public aware.
Yeah.
Just to go through it fully.
You good now?
Good.
Okay. All in favor for the human resource item?
Aye.
Say aye. Aye. Okay. Item 4.1, portrait of a graduate.
Member Busby, President Greer Busby, members of the board, it's my pleasure to start kind of our first official work study in a long time. So the first item is portrait of a graduate. I passed out some folders to you. And again, this work had started last year. Wanted to bring you up to date in terms of where we are. There's been a few things going on, so it's gone on the back burner a little bit. But what you're looking at is kind of 3 rough drafts of a portrait of a graduate. With a portrait of a graduate, let me talk about mission and vision for a second. So in my mind, one of the things I heard is a mission of an institution is why we exist, or why do we show up every day. A vision is what are we moving towards, what are we aiming for. I believe this portrait of a graduate, the work that's gone into it, the work that we do, can provide a purpose and a clarity while succinctly becoming that vision and mission. If we accomplish this, creating students and helping students grow into these people, to me, is why we would get out of bed in the morning and why we would come to work. Why, and what are we aiming for? We're aiming to create students with these qualities. So again, this is the culmination of a work. We talked with every PTO, went to different schools, talked with our high school student cadre has had input on it. Our middle school superintendent's cadre, student cadre has had input on it. And again, the work has been done. This is the first draft. So again, you see draft across this. It's not a finished piece, but just wanted you to lay your eyes on it and get some first initial thoughts from you. As you're looking at the pages, the very first page, you see an introduction and that was worked on, and then the categories. If you flip over that page, that's another version of the same front, what would be a front. Then, okay, so you don't have them back to back, good. So we've got, well, I'm gonna pull them out with you because I have them back to back. So we've got one version of a front page, okay? Then the CCUS graduate with our commitment. That was another big thing that the group really liked is a commitment we make in CCUSD. So again, this is just another front page of a 2-page graphic. The second page, so the back of either one of those first 2, as the group was looking at it, kind of has the descriptors underneath it. Then that last one is really just a 1-page document that puts all things on 1 page. So sorry for that confusion, but that's it. Again, initial draft just for you to look at, for you to get some eyes on, for you to look at first reactions. I wanted it to be a first reaction as you quickly look at it and just scan. So we'll give you some moments to scan, look at it, and very interested in your thoughts. Yes. While you're scanning, I do want to add that some of the next work that needs to be done is really looking at what does this look like K2, what does it look like 3.5, what does it look like 6.8, what does it look like 9.12. Because being a critical thinker and problem solving at all those different levels looks slightly different. Again, we envision these in every classroom. It's something that's around everywhere. Again, being a communicator and collaborator, all of these look different based on what grade level you are and such. So, Member Walker, sorry. I
always love a 1 page. I feel like when people see two pages, you lose their attention. So I really like everything on 1. I think and I love all the descriptions. I think if we're trying to accomplish this as like a marketing piece for CCUSD versus this is what we want our kids to see, I guess who's the audience for this piece would kind of be my next question, because if it's as a marketing, I think you would have to put in what type of programming builds each of these things that are important to us.
Yeah, the intent is really internal and for us in terms of keeping an eye on the prize, giving us a laser focus, giving us something to be on target for and aim for, and have that, again, a common language throughout. Mm-hmm. So whatever school you are in 3-5, these are the types of, these are the qualities that we're looking for. These are the qualities we're aspiring to. These are the qualities that we need to provide students opportunities to experience. So, and I will also be honest, Portrait of a Graduate is not something totally innovative out of the, I mean, most districts have it. We don't. But many districts have it. If you've paid attention to even the state is talking about developing one for a state. There are some states around the country that have them more. It's more usually seen locally because what a Portrait of a Graduate for Cave Creek is not necessarily a Portrait of a Graduate for another school district.
Right. Okay.
I like the one page also because I think it's concise, but I like the second front where it specifically states a CCUSD graduate is, and then I like that you put a critical thinker, a communicator, and collaborator. So I like this page with all that on it. Does that make sense?
You like this page but with all this on it, or you like?
Yeah. So
Okay.
I like the one page that
Yep.
that has everything, but adding the critical pieces from this one.
I got you.
Where it says a CCUSD graduate is and a critical thinker and problem solver.
The committee that was working on this, did they have a preference to one of these?
I believe since we've created it, the one pager has certainly been something that has been a consistent feedback is having it all on one page as opposed to a back-to-back. Because again, we make posters out of this one page as opposed to two. So for all those reasons, that's been a consistent thing. But no, and then the committee is the one that came up with the language. So our graphic person kind of came up with some different options and things like that. So one page has been a consistent feedback, but other than that, they've been happy with the language and the things that were in there.
I think it would be beneficial to have the descriptors for each of these areas so that there's a clear understanding when we're saying Portrait of a Graduate includes being ethical. Everybody understands what our definition of being ethical is so that there's no misunderstanding.
Yeah, I agree. We want to have a definition because, I mean, same thing with, if I asked you what the definition of equity is, we might get 9 different things here, but if we have it spelled out, then here is the definition that we're referring to.
Yeah, it's clean. I mean, if you're getting nitpicky, I would probably just add icons because icons tailor back 2 points. So if you associate an icon, that helps kind of be able, especially for young, if you're taking this to kids, not really to your point from marketing, if this is more an internal cadence, having icons associate, which then kind of, I know this means X.
What would your ethical
Ethical can be things like handshake. There's a lot of different ways you can. I hate the stupid microphone thing. So yeah, ethical can be like handshake. There's a couple different icons that you can use to tailor that. Communication can be. There's a ton of icons that any graphics person can grab.
And again, I would also say that if you looked at other Portrait of Graduates, there's probably icons.
No,
that
no.
are out
I
there.
mean, I think what you guys did was great. I think the one page. Stupid Mike. I think what you guys did is great. One page, clear, concise. It translates. I think, the play to this kind of where I think you were heading, Member Walker, is another layer to it is how do you take this and turn it into an outward marketing message with more teeth that kind of goes, what separates us from everybody else? I think you got a good foundational point here. I think you can even curate a video and do some other things to amplify, but I think now putting more teeth to this to go outbound, what separates CCUSD from all the other districts, that's where I think the magic really starts to come together for you guys.
Well, you mentioned then drilling this down to how it will look for the different grade categories. Will that be something you'll bring back and share with us?
Absolutely, and ultimately bring back a final piece for your approval and to look at in that of this. Where we look at, or at least where I've thought, and Dr. Jensen jump in, this to me would be one of the greatest things our new grade level groups could really work on together, and have something that's created in our new teams and all of that stuff moving forward. So again, I'm not in a rush, but I do want to get the basics done and then be ready to roll out and have that material and the grade level bands ready to go, because that's what would ultimately get posted and put up at the different level schools.
So you want it for the beginning of the school year, next school year?
Yeah.
Yes, that would be great to have it for the beginning of the school year. Again, between now and then, the bandwidth of those teachers and the ability to get that done, we're going to push, we're going to see, but we want to involve them as well in that.
Is this heading into kind of a single identity as a district? So if you look at, now that pre-changes that were made recently over the beginning of the year, everybody had their own identity as far as schools go and so on. Are you going to unify the district into a singular identity?
This can be a unifying factor, but again, whether you're at any one of the schools, yes, through your programming, do we want you to be critical thinkers, problem solvers? Do you want them to be a communicator and collaborator? Yes. So there is a unification in that in terms of what ultimately our end product is when you graduate. But in terms of making every school the exact same cookie cutter, I don't believe that's what we're looking at doing.
Okay, item 4.2, communication information.
That's me again, so thank you, President Greer, members of the board. Vice President Ulmer had asked just for some kind of clarity or just explanation in different communication levels in CCUSD. So put together a little something. Really, we've got 3 main levels of communication, and then I'll add just a 4th kind of to make sure that you're aware. Ultimately, we'll talk about teacher level communication, school level communication, district level communication, and then I just want to make sure that you're aware of our CCUSD SAFE, which is our emergency communication. So teacher level communication, you've got emails to parents and students, parent-teacher conferences, class newsletters, our learning management system, so Google Classroom has communication pieces built in, text messaging apps like Remind. I will say that we use Remind. We are currently looking at Remind's now parent company is Dr. Hendrickson Parent Square. So we are looking at potentially shifting to Parent Square, which is again just a shift from Remind, which is now underneath Parent Square. Allows for some increased communication ability. But again, currently we're using things like Remind, phone calls, of course. And one of the most effective things, as long as your student brings home the information, is, of course, the teacher actually communicating with the student and the students bringing information home. School level communication. There we've got school-wide emails and newsletters, automated phone calls, school website updates, social media posts, the morning announcements, parent-teacher organizations, those meetings, and then, of course, school events and open houses, all the different community events that our schools participate in. From a district level standpoint in terms of communication, district-wide emails, of course, but press releases, media outreach, things like News from the Creek that goes out, our district website updates, our social media posts and campaigns, the Board of Education meetings. This is, of course, a great place for communication. Community meetings, forums, our different cadres, whether they're student community cadres that take place, community presentations. I do a lot of things with town councils, chambers, businesses, realtors, things like that. And then, of course, what I wanted to highlight is our emergency communication system as we've developed a brand for that. So if you look in your folder, you'll see kind of the CCUSD SAFE letterhead. So hopefully if you're a parent in the district, you've seen this come out. And if you have not, then just to be aware. Again, sometimes there's a lot of things being sent out, and we wanted to draw attention to where if a parent sees this, they know I should open that. So we've branded CCUSD Safe. So again, if there is any type of emergency, we've given our schools, they practice. So if there is a fire drill, they take that opportunity to act as practice. We would be sending out communication, here it is. Now that very much starts with, we had a drill. So parents know that there was a drill. It was not necessarily a real incident. But again, just drawing your attention to different ways that we're trying to make sure, again, we know our parents are very busy, and when you get an email from CCUSD, it might not always be something you think you should open, but CCUSD Safe is hopefully that thing where you know, hey, if I see that, I am going to at least take a look on that. Questions?
I just want to say this year communication is well noticed. So
Could you say that on the microphone?
I said communication was better this year. Yeah. No, I just wanted you guys to know communication, especially from the parent side, and you guys send a lot of it. So I always laugh when I get some messages, hey, they never said that. And I send about 27 links to different things. I go, really? So you guys are doing, I mean, there's always better, but noticed. Frequency. There was better deployment of newsletters, cadence and texting. So text and then email follow-up. So they're doing a good job at cadence. And that's kind of like in any communication structure is when you have cadence, instead of just one-offs, if you go, I'm going to hit you with this channel and then I have the follow-up and you keep going, that gets better engagement. So I think that's the uptick. And then there's been some good social media activity. So been noticed.
Did you want to give credit to someone? Because I was going to, in terms of our social media, the digital media. But
I was going to give, number one, I would give credit to Allison, who's just phenomenal and really works with all of our staff to really push out that messaging and making sure it's a professional looking message and making sure we're unified with our newsletters. I just want to chime in a little bit about frequency and how we do it with the addition of Parent Square that they're looking at. It's an app that my kids use in their current school district. And it's a one-stop shop for all of your information that you need. So you're not getting a newsletter, you're not getting a text message, you're not getting a voice message or an email. It's all in one place. It's very user-friendly, allows you from the app to email the teacher from right there, so you're not having to search for the teacher's email because it's linked to your child. If you're a coach, you can link all your players to this app and say, okay, practice is canceled, instead of trying to figure out how do I get a hold of my all my students. And then there's a Student Square version of it as well, to where the students will be able to have access to communicate. And I'll just say, just with how people operate these days, they want it in one place. They want to be able to scroll. They want it to be able to archive all their announcements, so you can look back. What was last week's newsletter? Really, really nice. A bit of a learning curve for our teachers. But I know my wife, who's a teacher in this district as well, absolutely loves using it because it's the one place that she can go for all the communication.
So it's kind of like
and Dr. Hendrickson, it's not that they still won't get the information from an email, a text, a newsletter. It'll all just be in one house.
Yeah. So what it does, it'll be in the newsletter. Then you'll get a push notification through an email that says, "Hey, the weekly newsletter is now up," so you can look at it through the email or look at it through the app and pick it right there. So
it's kind of like Band, right? Because I know our cheer team uses Band, and it does a lot of those same things, which really enhances every aspect of communication. So, and then it even allows like the parents have like their own little channel inside of it, so that they can talk about things going on without the kids. So it's pretty.
Yeah, and I know there's some. I was just looking at it the other day. There's some features on it as well where you can do forms on there. So if you're doing your and my kids' school hasn't used it yet, but if you're doing your field trip form, you put the field trip form right in there, and then it'll be right available for you, things like that. So sign up RSVPs, lots of different ways. So it's fantastic.
How does that work with power schools? Because I feel like even getting that adoption, like, do they talk to each other? It's still all separate, because having 4 kids at 4 different schools, even like I have seen this year, the formatting is very concise compared to years past, how newsletters come out, frequency, it seems like it's pretty concise. But sometimes thinking, is that in Remind? Is it on Power Schools? Where do I find that?
Yes. Yes. So I sat through a training on Parent Square, and it is, in theory, supposed to communicate with PowerSchool seamlessly as long as we have lists set up. So I think where it's going to be easy is if we want to email all the fourth graders, no problem. We can email the fourth graders. Or Mrs. Walker's class, we can email Mrs. Walker's class. But if it's I want to email my drama club, then drama club is going to need, because they are not flagged in PowerSchool as drama club. So drama club will need to go in and set up their drama club, which they do in Remind anyway. And so they will have to set up those ones, but then from the parent side, they're just getting them all in one place, which I think will be nice. And because I know, when your kids are in multiple things, and then we also know they're not always just in the district, then you get the outside of the district communication as well.
And we also believe that it's really important to have some consistency and some common, to where a cheer team isn't using this program, this team is using this. Here is the standard program that everybody can use. Coaches, whether you're an on-campus coach or you're an off-campus coach, here's the communication. Here's the way to standardize that, and again, keep it in that one spot for parents.
Currently, if that's at the coach's discretion or club's discretion, I would guess that there's fees for every single one of those accounts, where this would be just where currently, like if they're using Team Snap versus Band versus Remind, or if you had this one platform, is it just the same fee no matter how many users? It's just a district monthly fee, or how does a software app like that work? Anybody
Yes,
know?
I believe it's just we buy the product and then we get to use it. And if they are using things other than Remind, they shouldn't be. We'll just put it that way, because we do need to have a back channel from the HR side of things. We do need to know. We need a tracking method. It sounds silly, but for HR purposes, so that we can make sure that the communication is safe and that it's meeting all of our professional standards as well.
Item 4.3, IBN review.
President Greer, members of the board, I'm going to turn this one over to Dr. Hendrickson to give you an update and kind of just some information. And I know there's been questions before, so there's an opportunity for you guys to even ask some questions about perhaps what is IBN or anything like that. So, Dr. Hendrickson.
President Greer, I think I used the wrong one last time. President Greer, members of the board. Yeah, one of the things that we've discussed is, how do we kind of keep that ongoing communication of what's happening behind the scenes prior to, major decisions or changes that are happening. I know we have some of our CCA reps here, and so we do have a great working relationship with them. We meet at least once a month at the end of our cabinet meeting to hear concerns, kind of make progress on what things that are working on, what are some things that they want to see happening for next year. And so it's even though IBN runs a course, we present, we implement some changes, that communication keeps going. And so I just want to kind of give you an update on a few things that we're continuing to look at. Obviously, the budget is always a big thing on where is our budget and how much of the saved money can be distributed to teachers in any fashion, whether it be to the base, whether it be to a stipend, things like that. So that's one of the things that we had a discussion with at our last meeting with them. One of the things that they're very interested, which I can greatly agree with, is currently they get a column movement for if they have their bachelor's, they're working towards their master's. Every 8 credits they get a set amount. So looking at how do we increase those. We haven't increased those in I think 10 plus years is what they said. Could be longer than that. So how do we incentivize our staff for continuing their education? We currently don't have a whole lot. Every January, February, they submit their continuation of credits, and we probably get less than half a dozen that submitted that way. And that's the best way for our teachers to increase their salary. So, again, once our budget settles and we see, the whites of the eyes of the kiddos that are coming to us, is that a possibility that we can look at with that? One of the things that we do see happening is an increase in our classroom site funds. And so how can we find ways to give more of the classroom site funds to our staff? The classroom site funds, and Dr. Platnick can jump in at any time with things. It's meant for purposes as classroom site reduction or classroom size reduction, things like that. And so you don't want to give all the money away because sometimes you're using it for staffing positions, things like that. So how can we, as that's increased over the last several years, how do we give more to to either the base and build it in the base, or the classroom site fund that is part of their total compensation? And so I know it's an unpredictable number, just as the state budget is. And so luckily it's been increasing over the last 7 years. And so that's one of the things I know Dr. Pletnick is going back and looking at. The safest way for us to provide that is as that additional stipend, because if that amount goes down, the stipend goes down. Not that we want to do that, but it doesn't lock us in. And I believe that's been the philosophy of kind of CFOs now and in the past, of because we don't have a reserve, that as this number fluctuates up and down, if it goes down, we're safe for a year or two because we can use reserves. So that's the apprehension that's been with that. We will be making the last payment for the one-time additional funding that the governor put into place 2 years ago now, maybe 3 years ago now. So the third installment will be coming in the fall for our teachers. Those are teachers that were here in the 22-23 school year, that finished the year with us, that returned. This is the third year of that stipend. And if you recall, in IBN, we made a determination how that would be split up, and I believe it's proportionally split up. The IBN teams felt that it was important that it's split up over 3 years, because if there's not additional raises, at least we can rely on the stipend. One of the things that was great foresight from them was, if you give it all out at once, you have people that take that money that leave the district, and the ones that are staying here, there's no additional money for them. So how do we incentivize those? A few other things that we're kind of working through is the evaluation cycle and the requirements of the evaluation cycle. How do we find a balance between what does research say is best practice with evaluations and feedback, but how's that balance with teacher workloads, and where can we have some compromise on things based on a teacher's being in the continuing status, or from a teacher that is receiving the highest rating in the areas. There's an alternative cycle that's by statute that's allowed for that. And then beginning of the year training, I think we talked about that a little bit. Currently, seems like there's mandates every single year from the state level of this training has to come down, this training has to come down, this training has to come down. So how can we streamline that, make it a little bit easier? There will be a new training that's going to extend training for teachers at the beginning of the year, having to do with mandatory reporting. That's been extended to substitute teachers as well. That's a requirement. So all important things, but things that are very much taxing on teacher time. And so how can we find a balance with that and find solutions if that's an extra paid day before the start of the year that we can give teachers to do the training, or how do we build it in? So we'll continue those conversations when things settle down with staffing and hiring. We'll be going back to the list and having conversations as a cabinet of where can we find kind of the middle ground and support teachers, support their time, but also kind of holding the standard of our professional practices. So.
And you brought in, when you mentioned the accountability and talked about substitute teachers, is that long-term subs or just a one-off?
Even a one-off. So so we are currently having conversations of how do we, because currently subs only get paid when they work, and so how do you budget for having a sub come in when they're not serving in a classroom to be able to pay that? And it's an annual training, so how do we do that in their onboarding? But then how do we build it into their training once they start? Luckily for subs, for the most part, they'll have a prep during the day. That's not a traditional prep because they're not prepping for the next class. And so how do we ensure ways that we can track that? Hey, within the first month of school or your first 5 days subbing for us, you have to do the refresher training. So a little bit logistic, kind of figuring that out, but yeah, it'll be with that.
Dr. Hendrickson, I believe there's also a board member portion of that new requirement.
Correct.
As a mandatory reporter, so we'll get you some training too.
No,
Nope. That's a new one.
and more coming. Just on the tape.
Any other questions?
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Couple questions. Incentives for continuing ed, kind of tying that into, I know we've always, there's always been a need or trying to figure out how to offer more dual enrollment at the high school level. But there's not an incentive for that versus AP. Maybe you guys could look into that. And I know it's additional training that has to come with that as well. So.
Great question, Member Walker. Dr. Jensen?
Yes, thank you, Member Walker. So actually, in our May board meeting, we're going to be bringing a proposal for a stipend that we want to attach to dual enrollment classes for teachers who choose to teach them. Yes, they need to have a master's in the content area that they're teaching, which is hard to find because many of our teachers do a great job of getting their master's in education. That doesn't work. So if it's math, they have to have a master's in math or whatever that may be.
But then looking at similar to how some of our teachers earn extra money for passing IB tests, AP tests, things like that, using some of the dollars that come back to us from the dual enrollment from the community colleges and looking at, but it's a preview of what will come in May, but kind of what is a percentage that we feel comfortable and how do we split that amongst and give them some credit for teaching those higher level classes and getting our kids some college credit.
And for a master's program, if you already have your master's in education and you need to get at something very specific in math or English, do any of those credits transfer or you have to start all over a 2-year program and it's going to cost you $80,000 because that's what
good question. That would be between the person and their institution that they're going to. So most of them, I would imagine, would take like 9 elective credits, and then probably the rest are going to have to be in that specific area. So it's a lot, and it does cost a lot of money. That's why we are trying to make it more than, you get a $500 stipend for teaching this, because a $500 stipend would take them probably 20 years to pay back their
the education
master's at a
needed
cheap
for
place.
this. Yeah. Okay.
Member Walker, if I could just jump in on that too. This was last year, so I'll look for it and send it to you. But I know the state was trying to find ways to encourage people to get their dual credit certification and get that master's. Not a lot, doesn't pay for the master's in any means, but I know that even at the state level, they're looking to incentivize that. So.
And there were some grants available if you applied as well, but again, we want to make it worthwhile.
Okay. Thank you. I know that was always trying to figure out sort of thing. And then one other thing for the evaluation process that you discussed, that's mostly done by principals, correct?
Correct. Primary evaluators are going to be the principals. There's from time to time, like Carrie Gregory, our ESS director, will be taking on, her specialist positions. She'll do those, but it's going to be on our principals that are doing those.
And assistant principals, and that's the list of evaluators that get approved at the beginning of every year.
And when it comes to figuring out like what type of evaluations, because you said you kind of look at data or kind of what's the norm, whether that's nationally, but is there like some collaborative where you bring all these leaders together and people give their inputs on different evaluation metrics, or is it just this is what the state's doing and they're top of, how does
Yeah, good question, Member Walker. So from the state level, the state just has a bare minimum expectation of 2 formal evaluations, 60 days apart, things like that. And then dependent on the evaluation tool that you're using, that is research-based, ours is the strong instrument that we use, they have additional requirements for that. And so things such as artifacts that show the things that we don't observe in the classroom, but things that are leading to the instruction that's taking place. Student goals, which we got to continue because they're built into the pay for performance, but surveying students is one of those that's a piece of the strong evaluation instrument. And so it's a matter of looking at where do we see high yield return on investment when we focus on those areas, and those are good and improve instruction and improve teaching when done with fidelity, but also making sure that with whatever we do, that it is consistent. And so it's not the lottery game for teachers of, if I go to this school, I only get this many evaluations, but this school, I get X amount of evaluations. So regardless of what we do, and as we look back at the strong instrument and we say, hey, if you're in your 4th or 5th year, these are at least the minimum requirements, that's going to be the same for all sites. So.
How long have we had that strong as our
this is the third year that's been implemented.
And there was a large group of teachers, administrators. It was, and Dr. Jensen, you could maybe talk more about it because I think you were on that committee, but.
Yeah, there was a group of teachers, administrators, that's about it, who came together, and Dr. Strong kind of led it in terms of discussing best practices and the difference between a highly effective teacher, an effective teacher, developing teacher, and a needs improvement teacher. And really, a lot of the training focused on what happens if a student has a underdeveloped teacher for 2 years in a row, and why we need to use the evaluation system as a tool to make sure our students have the highest quality professionals in front of them every single day, and that we can't let years go by where we're not, where we're allowing our students to have underdeveloped teachers.
So when we go down this path, what's the, I mean, obviously some of the points that you hit on the IBN as far as pay increase, finding those different gaps, what's the consequence to the carry forward, Dr. Plutnik? You were lonely, so I figured I'd throw one at you.
Yeah, I'll bring the microphone to me. As far as, remember, classroom site funds, which were the discussion, that is a separate funding pot from M&O. So when we're looking at it, you have those different buckets that I always talk about. One is the classroom site funds, so sales tax, state land trust. Also, they're going to be receiving their annual instructional improvement fund payment. Indian gaming funds are coming up in May. So really, carry forward wise, if there's an adjustment to the classroom site fund, that's not going to impact the M&O.
So that just sits in its own bucket.
Mm-hmm. Yes, because it has its restrictions. So it's actually governed by a state statute. So 50% can go towards teachers, and then we have a list of what we can use the other 50% for.
And the same.
That whole site fund was really generated to give teachers the increase, which
Correct,
some
yeah.
people really created the burn there because they weren't giving the teachers the impacted percentage.
Correct, yeah. And that's what we wanted to ensure that we did. And that's one thing that Mr. Dolezal spoke about, is that we ensure that we maximize any one of those buckets to give to our teachers that we possibly can, such as the 50% for the instructional improvement fund, and ensuring that even if they historically did not receive that we are making sure that they absolutely do receive those monies.
And that's what I was just going to say, is that we've made a commitment to when, we get the Indian gaming funds, for instance, that we can give up to 50%, that we are giving 50%. And that's been the case for the last 2 years anyways. And with Marcy and now with Ryan, we've made a commitment along with Frank and Patty that we're going to give the maximum amount that we're allowed to out of those things, just to, again, do whatever we can. Yes.
When do they find out what those amounts are? Or when do you find out what the gaming is going to be and how that affects their contracts?
That is a great question.
That's like a land trust too, right? Or gaming.
Yes, the classroom, there's two different funds. So we received two payments for the instructional improvement fund. So one comes in June, the other comes in January. So it's split in two. Historically within the district, it's been given one time in the year, and we did have a discussion with CCA of splitting that into, so we're not holding on to that money and not giving it immediately to the teachers, giving it one first semester, one second semester after we receive those funds. As far as the classroom site fund, we're still hearing what the number could be, but it's still not determined for us quite.
And with that, it's difficult at some point because June is in one fiscal year and the other one's in the next. So we have been kind of combining the two. But again, what we've committed to is the June will come out. We'd like to do it right around late November, early December, kind of a little bit before the holidays, so something there. And then the other one comes out in January. So we would give that out in May, again, towards the end of the year, a little kind of going away. And the other piece that we've committed to is doing it as a separate check, because if we combine it, like, oh, my check is bigger, but not really an explanation. But CCA supported that. Again, having that separate check so they see, no, this is something different than my regular.
So is that classified as a bonus, a stipend, and how does that?
Yeah, for tax reasons.
It's not something built in their salary. It isn't, because again, that's going to differ every year based on how much comes in. So it literally is just another that winds up going on their total compensation, but it is not something that's in a correct.
Any other questions? Item 4.4, building transition.
President Greer, members of the board, I'd like to just start a little bit talking about the work in terms of all the buildings. We are still waiting for this parcel particularly has been a little bit of a challenge. So again, finding out what the conveyances are on all of our parcels, things like that. What we know, and I believe I'm repeating myself, but again, just to make sure, Sonoran Trails, Horseshoe Trails, that land is leased through the state. There's nothing we can do with that other than run schools. Desert Sun Academy, we know through the investigation is we own the land, we own the property, so that's ours. Kind of whatever options we come up with, that's there. We've got Lone Mountain, where that's a partial owner split between SFD and us. There's arguments, and we're having lawyers work on where exactly that breakdown is. Again, but we'll move forward, and Dr. Henderson will talk about the Lone Mountain property. Dr. Jensen will talk about Desert Sun. Desert Willow, we know through the conveyance. It is written into the deed by the building company that built it and gave that land to us, that has to be a public elementary school. That's it. That's the only option for Desert Willow. Then we get up into here, and this wonderful 175-acre parcel. So again, there was a 100-acre conveyance from the federal government, and with the stipulation that has to be used for educational purposes unless we get permission from the Secretary of the Interior. Then there's another 15-acre state conveyance. Then there's another 60-acre state conveyance. And then there's a small reserve, state land reserve, because of the genetically mutated saguaro cactus that's in a particular area that we can't touch. So what we can't find in any records to this date is, okay, it's not quite a rectangle, but where exactly is the 100 acres? Where are all the other conveyances? Because that will dictate what we may or may not be able to do with some of those lands. So that is in the survey process now in terms of having a surveyor, because we've been unable to locate where that is other than that. So that's a very brief update, kind of just on the conveyances and deeds and things like that that we've got. And ultimately, we wanted to give you kind of a little bit of an update on next year. So Dr. Jensen.
Absolutely. Thank you. President Greer, members of the board, along with the fun of plotting out the land, we've been hard at work working on transitioning everyone. And so some of that has involved the things such as relocating staff and issuing contracts. That was a big feat in and of itself. Working on what is sixth grade going to look like at Sonoran Trails, and making sure that we've got excellent options for our sixth graders, which is going well. The course design, the registration process, all of that. Planning for the physical moves of classrooms to Horseshoe Trails and Black Mountain. Dr. Plutnik has been working with moving companies to figure out some of that. And then considering options for reutilizing the schools, which is really kind of what we're talking about right now. As you all know, one of the issues that we've been working on, or one of the core purposes of why we exist, is to make sure that all students are learning. And we struggle with that sometimes because all students don't fit into the same square hole, or whatever you might want to say. And so we're looking at finding programs that make sure that all of our students can access our curriculum and the excellent programs that we have to offer. I know we've talked a lot about the fact that currently we spend about $2 million each year in private day school tuition alone. This does not include the transportation, the evaluations, or some of the other services that we have to provide as well. What we're hoping to do is to be able to use some of Desert Sun as a method of recapturing those funds. So it wouldn't necessarily, it is not a revenue source, but it would be a stop sending the money away to other districts, not other districts, to private schools source. In the meantime, we also have a small group of students who I'm going to say are at risk of dropping out or that do drop out each year. Often we don't call them dropouts anymore because on the withdrawal codes, they say they're going online. We've followed some of those, and many of them don't actually end up appearing anywhere online when we follow up and look into that. And so we want to make sure we're estimating 20 to 40 out of the whole high school. So that's really a small percentage per year, but that's another ADM lost each year. So looking at those two groups of students, the students who we send to private day schools, and then the students who are at risk of dropping out or have already left us for whatever reason, we want to use Desert Sun as a way to recapture them. We've looked at a couple solutions because we did have a parent who gave us some excellent resources and shared a contract agency that supports districts such as ourselves with special ed programming. And Mrs. Gregory and I met with them, and Dr. Pletnick as well, to discuss what that could look like. And in essence, they come into our space, they run a few classrooms for students who have more severe disabilities, some of the types of students who we have to privately place, and we then pay them for their services. So we got a quote from this group, and the minimum is we must have 2 classrooms of 10 students each. And that would be about $800,000. They give us a range, but 798 was the low end of the range. And that's 2 classes of 10 students. If we have only 10 students, we still pay $800,000. If we have 22 students, we privately place the 2 overflow students or do whatever we need to do. So we have to pay that no matter what. There's some great things about the program, namely that it would be off of our plate and would free us up to do other things. However, it does still leave a gap in terms of serving our students and doesn't provide us much flexibility in terms of what we can do, because we are really stuck with it. It is their program. They'll work with us, and they seem like a great group, but it is still their program. So then the alternative option is that we can run the program ourselves. We could locate it at Desert Sun Academy, and by all of our estimates, we can run it for under $500,000. And then we would have the ability to make adjustments as needed. We're planning to continue exploring this option. We're not completely set on it yet, but we want to continue exploring and going down this path. We have already, and I think I've mentioned it, been piloting a program for one group of those students, what I'm going to call our dropout prevention students. And it's been quite successful. We had some students who had missed, they had been chronically absent, I'll just say it that way, and they have not missed a day since coming to this small group here at the district office, working with a teacher. And then they do go down to Cactus Shadows. Some of them, depending on their needs, go down to Cactus Shadows for part of their day for electives or other such purposes. So we're hopeful. We think it will be very positive. We like the flexibility of doing it ourselves because we know our kids, we know the needs that they have. And that's one of the things we've been looking at with Desert Sun. Let me add one caveat, because I know one of the questions is going to be, well, why not just leave it here at the district office? One of the issues is right now we have not expanded it to EDP, which stands for Emotional Disability Public. So we have not expanded it to those students yet. If we do that, there are requirements, and sometimes it is that it is separate from other students, and it needs to be at a bigger distance than what we could do with Cactus Shadows. And sometimes there are students who there's a very good reason that they should not be on Cactus Shadows campus for an extended period of time, whatever that may be. Dr. Hendrickson, do you want to talk about Lone Mountain, and then we can answer questions?
Well, and I just wanted to add a piece to that it also does potentially become an area where a student who might make a mistake might earn a long-term suspension, something like that, where we could actually, that would be their alternative placement in lieu of necessarily a long-term suspension.
Yes, because for those students, we are currently privately placing them because we're still obligated to provide a free, appropriate public education for them. And so when we do that, sometimes we then incur those costs. So this is a nice way to handle that, which...
All right. Thank you, Dr. Jensen. In terms of Lone Mountain, obviously, kind of it was our initial look is how do we use this as a community school and what sort of community programs that we can bring in there. So our first initial work that we have been doing is how do we expand our preschool options. We know that that is a great need in lots of communities. Currently, we only serve kind of 3s, 4s, mainly 4 and 5-year-olds on our current site campuses. But how do we use that as a great revenue stream to compete with some of the daycares and preschools around us? And so I've been working with Mr. Grosso with our ECS program and Dr. Jensen as well to define our different tracks and define tracks that are different than what is offered on our current sites. We know that we have families that want to be at Black Mountain because their kid is going to be enrolling in kindergarten, so they want that continuity, they want that familiarity. And so we're looking at how do we make tracks that are different. So number one, building a 2-year-old's track to capture those students, and then a 3-year-old's, and then kind of a pre-K track. And so we've started the process of defining those, and then we're also working with a marketing company, a local marketing company, to how do we get the word out? If you currently Google Cave Creek preschools, you're not going to find Black Mountain preschool. You're not going to find Horseshoe Trails preschool. You're going to have to go and scroll down a little bit. Frankly, we just simply have not been doing a good job of advertising and things like, having I won't speak eloquently to this, but having the Google business profile for those, and so they know exactly what it is. Or when we say it's ECS preschool, people don't know what ECS stands for. And so how do we rename and rebrand so it really stands out? How do we get more of a market share through Google ads, through advertising, through doing email blasts in our own community? And so we're working at different avenues. So it's our goal to be launching a 2-year-old and a 3-4-year-old's classroom next year, even if we start as little as the ratio for a 2-year-old's classroom is 1 to 8, so we start at 8 students in that classroom. Not only will it bring a profit, but we're also creating a stream of students, a pipeline of students that will be entering us. Other things that we are currently, in addition to that, as we're starting small with that, we've met with the YMCA and Mr. Dole has all met with them as early as today. Dr. Jensen and myself met with them last week of knowing that there's need for our older students in our community. Our 6th grade parents, as they're getting ready to go to Sonoran Trails, they have some apprehension. And so how do we use that space is there a need for our older kids to have a space to go to after school? Elaine Valera, who's our other ECS manager, she had a good long meeting with a local individual who is heavily involved in the homeschool networking and finding ways that these homeschool families are looking for outlets for their kids. Some of them are looking for the extracurriculars, some of them are looking for actually core teaching in English and math. And so how do we provide that for them at our ECS space? That could be a way for our current teachers to be able to supplement their income because they're serving and providing the supports after hours as well. One of the things that she had mentioned was in this meeting with this individual is the concept, I believe it was called Chi Pods, where you have students that are online. However, their parents don't want them to be online at home. They want them in a space. And so they come to a structured space where they do 2 hours of work, 30 minutes of structured downtime, 2 hours of work, and they would drop them off in a space like this. doing their online work. They could be at different programs on their online work. We would be able to capture a portion of the ESA scholarships that they are taking. So again, we're starting small with the preschools, but looking at what are all of these expanded opportunities that are out there. And then obviously our summer school will be housed out of there. All of our breaks will be housed out of there. But at the end of the day, if someone big comes in and says we want to run it all and take care of it all and do it all, and it's going to make us more money and less of a headache, we're also open to that. So,
Yeah, thank you. I did want to make sure you knew that we are listening to any and everyone who comes to us on properties in terms of what their ideas might be. Following up, I have met with the city managers and planners of Scottsdale, Phoenix. I've got the Phoenix group coming out May 28th. Since we've got Lone Mountain, which is right next to the Lone Mountain Park, which is supposed to break ground this year, according to them, as we sat there and talked with them. So the Parks and Rec and some other City of Phoenix people are coming out the 28th kind of to look and continue to explore options like that. So we are always on the lookout. We've talked about, hey, this is kind of the plan now, but that's not to say, again, if AAA tenant comes in or wants something or what have you, that program couldn't be located somewhere different, and we take advantage of that. Again, a lot of these, what Dr. Jensen talked about is really cost cutting. Again, continuing to cut costs to be within our budget. What Dr. Hendrickson's referring to is a little bit more of revenue streams. And again, I think to balance a budget, you got to have a combination of both of those.
With expense. Go ahead, buddy.
I might answer your question, Dan, because it's usually down your alley. All right. So also would like to make note that, and as we were talking about some of the buckets of money that we do get, again, 50% of the instructional improvement money we're sending to the teachers, but there's another 50% we have to use for things like dropout prevention. So just like in the program that Dr. Jensen was talking about, we could use that other 50% for that. And then on the classroom site fund, again, once we negotiate what percentage goes with CCA for salaries and for all of that, we would use whatever remaining percentage from that classroom site fund. It could do things like dropout prevention as well, and some intervention programs. So that is the benefit to those kinds of programs, and using some of those alternative funding where it wouldn't necessarily hit our M&O. So new adventures. So, like in respect to like the preschools, you often hear me say that cash side of things, that ECS side. So that money comes in on that side of the house, and it's not budget controlled. So we can use that money in various different ways for special projects. We can move it between certain accounts. So it's a lot more freedom. Yeah, a lot more freedom to that one.
So in reference to your marketing, it's local service ads is what you're going to be looking for? Write this down to save you time and money. Local service ads are an entry point on Google. Mm-hmm. Doing Google paid search is going to be a high premium. Facebook targeted ads based on interest will be an entry point of low expend. And then building out each portal onto your existing website with targeted keywords will give you the lift of organic traffic at a no cost. So, yeah, I do it for 20 some odd years, but
I'm trying to pull up all. Yeah, when we work with, so we're working with Eric from Uncorked Media. Uncorked Media. Uncorked Media. So yeah, all of those, because currently, when I came in 3 years ago, our marketing strategy was let's post it in the newspaper. Mm-hmm. Let's advertise for kindergartners in the newspaper and jobs in the newspaper. Well, we don't know who it's getting to, but I'm going to take a guess. It's not getting to young families. It's not getting to people that are interested in working. And so finding out ways that we can be very strategic, have multiple layers of marketing out there. There was a fancy word they used, and I can't pull up my page here.
While you're pulling up the page, I do want to emphasize, though, that I don't believe we can totally abandon the paper because of the 55,000 voters that are in our district, and that lots of them still get the paper. Mm-hmm. And so it's not an abandon or anything. It's just really improving and upscaling.
Yeah, that paper is different than like Metro paper. So that's know your
Correct.
demographics. So yeah, but being how you're going out of your demographic, you want to farm from a different pool. So
Yeah.
Did you find your fancy word?
It was SESOE?
SEO.
SEO. See,
Search
that's
engine
what-
optimization. So it's
Yes.
organic. Yes. If you build on your page and put your proper page structure in and with keywords, you can obviously get an
Correct.
organic lift.
Yep. So we're learning all those things along the way. And so, again, we haven't done those things. We haven't put the investment in those. We also met with a parent in our community who works for AZ Family, and they do a whole marketing side of it. And she had just a great story. She's new into the community. She's been here for 4 or 5 months. Has a young one in school and a younger one. And finally she drove by one of the schools and goes, I didn't realize we had preschools in our schools. So perfect example of where we can do better.
Yeah. Well, you got a ton of high school students that can actually help in that, from videographer and to, use your free resources, my friend. Go ahead.
I'm going to go back to Dr. Jensen for Desert Sun, because I liked the idea of kids being here. I think we've even discussed this. It's very sad for me to see when I've noticed at different electives, like some of those students aren't there that were performing the year before, and it's because they're competitive dancers or they do a club sport, and so they're switching online, and yet they're still showing up to watch their friends perform. And to me, that's almost a missing piece, because I think they want to still be a part of their community. So I liked that some of the students can be here and go over to Cactus Shadows for those type of electives. But if we're moving them to Desert Sun, how's that transportation piece work?
Yeah, good question. So we'd block the day out, and many of them would even have an alternative schedule. So we'd really look, I mean, it's going to be individualized per kid, but let's say periods 1 and 2, then there's a bus that is going to go back and forth, a special ed bus that we can use with special ed funds, and it's really a van, and it will drop kids back and forth. But we would only do 2 periods at a time so that it's worth the time.
Okay. And then for having that, you had mentioned like long-term suspension. How do you separate all these different types of kids on a specific campus? Because we know these campuses were built to hold 1,000 kids, but if we have specialized programs, is it legal maybe to use each building as sort of separate on a campus, or is there
one
like
of
distance and mileage when you're
Yes.
saying they have to be so
No,
far?
so that's one of the things that's nice about Desert Sun, is because it is all a bunch of different little pods. And so the EDP is the only group that needs to have its own separate area, and I think there might be some fencing requirements in terms of there needs to be a certain number of exits or something like that before. So we'd follow all of those codes, of course. And then the other students, again, it's totally individualized, because, I mean, even no 2 long-term suspensions are the same. You have one student who has been a chronic nonstop, and we can predict what their behavior is going to be tomorrow. And then you have another one who, made a silly mistake and did something else. And so none of them are the same. So each one would be evaluated based on their unique needs. Of course, we would have our school psychologist working very carefully. So if there was ever a student who's deemed a threat, then we're going to put in appropriate precautions. What we've found, though, and I think research supports this, is that when there's appropriate supports in place, they will be okay. When you put them in with 1,400 other students, and you can't have as much supervision with 1,400 students. On any given day, we trust these kids to pass from class, to go to the bathroom, to go to lunch, and to drive to school, for crying out loud, all of that stuff. And so in this setting, that trust would not be there. There would be much more supervision, like 1 to 3 type of supervision.
And how do you staff? Is the ages that is it based on age, or is it based on need of this child? Because a 10-year-old, one 12-year-old, we'll just do like middle school, can be very different than another 12-year-old.
Good question. So there does need to be some age banding, and so we have to keep some of those grade bands within a certain level. But what we're looking at right now is on the EDP side, it would be, I think we said 1 to 3 in terms of a behavior tech. per student, and then one teacher overseeing multiple programs, because the teacher is in charge of the curriculum, so that's a little bit different. But then the behavior tech is really the one doing the hands-on supervision. Hey, okay, that's a long enough break, back to work. And they're moving that. So 1 to 3 on the students who have the more extreme behaviors, and then the students, the other side of it, I'll call it the dropout prevention side, more of a 1 to 10 ratio. Again, somebody might need a one-on-one, and so that child's going to get a one-on-one. So it would be, which we're still money ahead even if they had that. So it really is individualized, and we kind of have some models set up with the students that, because we have obviously sheets of all of these kids, and we know exactly who we can do and how we can cluster it all.
And I think this is my last question for Desert Sun. I just lost my train of thought. For curriculum for these retention, potential dropout, I forget the terminology, sorry. Is that all an online curriculum? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yes and no. So yes, it will largely be driven through Edgenuity, which is what we use for our AOE right now. So it's already something that we pay for anyway. However, depending on the student and their individual needs, we might have to adjust it for some of them, because it is a pretty rigorous pace in Edgenuity, and the teacher would need to supplement and make sure that the students are able to stay on track and support.
Okay.
And the teacher would also have to provide what we call specially designed instruction, so that we make sure that we're meeting their special education minutes that their IEP team has determined that they need.
So to be part of that program, you have to have an IEP or a 504? Or, like I said, you can have those same students that just need a self-paced because they're going to go dance 40 hours a week on top of doing school.
I think initially for us to get this off the ground, we're going to go with that just because we need to keep it smaller anyway. And then our goal would be that we would expand so that others can come as needed. Our goal is always to get them at Cactus Shadows. That's really where we want them. But this is a good alternative in the event that that's not working for them.
Did you hit on Desert Arroyo as far as the demolition and land?
We have not heard back. Desert Arroyo is part of the 175-acre conveyance that we need the survey done in terms of finding out.
But we haven't heard anything back on the demo.
Correct.
Okay.
We do not have anything back.
Just making sure I was paying attention.
Now you mentioned, this is with Desert Sun specifically, you mentioned that it wouldn't be a revenue source, but in the future, because I know the initial plan, could it become one where we take in other districts' kids?
Yeah, there's definitely that potential. So as we're looking at it now and just looking at our costs so far this year, which again, we still have more of the year, between transportation and just our special education tuition costs, again, not counting all services or extended school year, we're almost at $2.2 million. So to be able to bring some of that back, bring some of our students back where, again, we think we can serve them much better. In our CCUSD system. That initially is the cost-cutting piece, but as the program expands, and again, we want to make sure we start it small enough that we can do it right as we expand, but there would be the opportunities, for example, let's say Fountain Hills would like to send a student. Certainly, we can charge tuition for that student to come and participate in that program. There are other districts that do have programs such as that, so that is a possibility with expansion.
And then you mentioned that there was a gap serving the students. What do you mean by that exactly?
We're constantly evaluating and assessing, and this area of which students are consistently not passing their classes, are maybe dropping out, are disappearing, are going online for whatever reason. That's this gap that we're finding. And I mean, I want to say, back in the day, it used to, here's our educational system, take it or leave it. You come help yourself. And we're kind of at a time where we need to say, okay, that doesn't work for you. Well, here's another option. We're going to give you something else that you might be able to, or that will help you as well. And so it's kind of switching from, we're giving everybody the opportunity for education, it's up to you to take it, to, no, we're going to guarantee that every student can succeed and that we're going to basically drag them kicking and screaming through it. And we're going to make you succeed, whether you like it or not. That's kind of what I want to shift our
Be successful.
you will be successful.
We do this, they won't be kicking and screaming.
Yes. And they'll stick with us, and we'll go back to our E's. They will then be ready to enlist, employ, or be employed, or enroll in school.
Okay, and then my final question. I just loved that whole helicopter thing with the open, and I know not everybody that lives around here did, but I sat out there and listened to it all the time because I'm where I live. But is there a potential to market that capacity with even these schools now? Not necessarily the football field or whatever, but we have Desert Royal, like all this open space. Is that a potential, not just with the open and helicopters, but just even parking and busing to all these? There's so many great events up here where I could see where that, I'm trying to think outside the box.
No, yeah, it's funny. It's capital raise, right? It's creative things to get more money.
So that may come up later. However, so yes, I will say we are always open to anything like that. We were open to this. We have done some learning since the helicopter thing, and let's just say that company will not be back. But yes, revenue streams, revenue sources, what we do and what we offer. I think it would be great if the town ever wanted to have people park down here and bus them up into a Taste of Cave Creek or something like that.
Bike week, I mean, the rodeo.
We used to do the balloon festival.
So yes, we would be, and that's a wonderful piece and part of me working with Mayor Morris, Mayor Crane, and kind of the chambers up in Cave Creek as well. So,
If I could just add on that, one of the things that we've had some kind of very initial discussions is that, knowing that we have this extra space that are revenue streams, how do we maximize that? And so how do we, almost create a commission-based position where it's their job to get people into our buildings, into our spaces, onto our fields, into any one of our facilities, and that's their job. But when it's not being used by us, it is booked up by someone else out there. Again, it creates another position, but is there a way to create a base salary and it's all compensation based? And they're driving this, they're marketing, they're advertising, and making sure when our sites and facilities aren't used by school, they're used by someone else.
Smart.
I have just a couple of questions about Lone Mountain really quick. With the preschool, part of me just has a concern of how many demographer meetings we've sat in of we have a declining amount of young families, and I know 8 seems like a really small number to get to that goal. Also moving up here years ago and having preschoolers, there's numerous Montessoris that start them that little as competition. So was that looked at as far as how much competition is offering those ages 2 through 5, with this also declining of there's not a whole lot of toddlers to grab?
Absolutely, and that's part of looking at the demographer report and knowing that there is a need, and we'll if there's not a need, then we will have to pivot. But for instance, Horseshoe Trails is opening a 3rd pre-K classroom. That corner is bringing in kids from all over, and so we are seeing a need. But going back to kind of our marketing, how are we marketing specific demographics of individuals, not just saying let's send this Facebook ad out to everyone, but if you meet these certain markers, we're going after you. We know that our preschools around us are continue to be full. We over spring break, while I was here working, had an individual come in that was looking for testing for their 3-year-old who needed to have a speech evaluation. So we know that they're there. We have not even barely put our toe in the water in years past of how we're trying to capture those. But yes, that is a concern. But we know we also continue to see that in Horseshoe Trails area specifically, a growth that's happening.
And again, continue to evaluate partners like the YMCA, who has very much experience in running all the way down to top, I mean, even younger than 2. And so, again, continue to explore, is it us? Is it ECS? Is it ours? Or are we looking at partnering with the YMCA? They're renting it, they're running it. And again, again, I still think that's a great community use in terms of that, but where they would be it would be a funding source from rental as opposed to us collecting tuition and things like that. So where is that point, and where's the break even would continue to operate and look at what's best serving the district?
Yeah, and I think even offering like that whole hybrid schooling, school from home, offering some, I think COVID taught, the parents that are at least 10 years younger than me, even probably, they're very creative in how much they work and how much time they're going to spend with their kids. And I think I think it's great that our elementary schools have their preschool programs, because then you have your working parents and those that want to drop off everybody all in one space. But it's like, okay, well, that's a Monday through Friday program from this to here. There's not a lot of flexibility with that. So I think offering that is a great idea.
And Member Walker, if I can expand on that, and the use of Lone Mountain will not be on the school schedule. It will be kind of year-round, exception of holidays, kind of extended hours, things like that. So it would not be on the school schedule. So it's for those families that go to the tutor time because they need throughout summer. They don't just need during the school year, which we only offer for our 3 and 4 and 5-year-olds right now.
Two more questions, I guess. I know programs like Boys and Girls Club, especially with like foster care and respite and kind of that other state funding involvement that I was familiar with. Those programs fill up like instantly in the summer. You're like on the waiting list, because you're getting all that supplemental funding from the state. Has there been any reach out to like a Boys and Girls Club? The closest one here for us is down by Desert Ridge.
Member Walker, that's not one that we have looked at as of yet. With our demographics and our clientele, we don't qualify for a lot of those first things first grants and whatnot, and so those typically become out of our reach. A few years back during COVID, when Governor Ducey had, I couldn't remember the program we had, we saw an influx. We saw grant funding that came with it. We had tons of kids from both within the district, outside the district, but based on kind of our demographics, we don't qualify for a lot of those that we could offer.
Well, this isn't based on funding that for the district. This actually would come from the foster parents and adoptive parents that are getting that certain funding. You have so many hours a year that you're given. And usually the hardest place is actually being able to spend that, whether it be in hours. Usually it's an hours allocation, which has a dollar amount to it, just because there aren't enough places that offer those type of services.
Absolutely.
So a little bit different than us qualifying.
Yeah, I'd love to hear it.
So just a suggestion.
Explore that more, yep.
And then did we get a cost on what these marketing, do we know like what the costs have been to do additional marketing as far as the Google, all of that sort of thing?
So we are so all of our marketing budget comes out of our ECS, and so that's where the funding comes from. And so that's kind of the next meeting that I have, I think next week, is now that we've kind of pinpointed what are our tracks, what are descriptions of our tracks, building the behind-the-scenes website for the landing page, reformatting the ECS page so it's easier to navigate, is to be able to come back and say, this much will give us this. This is layer number 1, whether it be an internal push. Here's layer number 2, whether it be through meta ads, things like that. Layer 3, where we're working with a third-party source to get email addresses, where we're then pushing flyers to specific email addresses that can then push to a flyer that goes home. And so we're going to get a quote on all those different layers and see where are we willing to invest. If we start to see a return, where do we double down on certain things? So.
One last question. The moving company. I think you've been working with that. Have there been any outreach to see if there's families that actually own commercial moving companies that would be bonded and licensed that maybe want to donate that sort of services to us in this time of need?
We haven't reached out to any individual families in order to see if there's discounted prices, so forth. One of the reasons is just because some of the purchasing rules and getting quotes, and if it passes 100,000, certainly we're reaching out and we're going to see additional pieces if we need help. The one thing that the company that actually I emailed them today to try to get the quote hopefully finalized this week. They are the same company that's worked with Scottsdale, Paradise Valley, and Roosevelt. They're working with this summer for the moves. So they're very experienced at moving schools to ensure that school equipment, school supplies. They actually also, another part of their business is school furnishings. So they're very familiar with all of the school structure. So the one thing we wanted to ensure is that, honestly, that this is as seamless as it possibly can be. And the systems that they have in place that they've successfully used with moving these other school districts. We found as we walked the school grounds with them, we talked about their processes, that we felt comfortable that all of the school district as well as all the teachers' individual materials could be moved and accounted for in a timely but also a secure manner. And we're also running out of time at this point because everything kind of needs to be in place soon. So that's why we have, and you've seen the Gantt chart that we work off of with all of our administrative tasks to get this move done. But with that, this moving company actually removes a few of those items for us because there were the ideas of, can we bring pods, for example, and have people help load them? But again, just for secure, to expedite the process and again, to ensure it's as smooth as possible. This is the company, after getting references and talking with others that we're comfortable with. So we still have to finish up the quote, and they are on a contract, so it's easy for us to secure them.
And this will be a like the entire, there'll be different times where we're moving, it'll be one big push to get them there. We may not bring all of the library material. So if you've got some contacts that you know of that you can share with us, we're happy, especially looking down the road as we continue to get everything accounted for. And then this first move, really getting from classroom A to new classroom A, that's one thing. But again, then there'll be different timelines for those things. So if you have contacts of people like that, please share them.
Any other questions?
Okay. So as far as the moving goes, well, for one thing, is there any chance of getting the community to help out with the teachers to pack their classrooms up? I saw a thing on some of the newsletters that they need boxes. I got a boatload of boxes at my house. If we can,
so PTO and some other groups have been on boxes. Those are going to be used if they want to take their personal materials home. But with a moving company, they are going to drop off. Here is the exact box, the size, all of that. So that's taken care of. So again, they've got it organized in terms of those boxes. But again, I know our PTOs and some other groups have done a great job collecting boxes. Those, again, teachers that they're going to take their personal stuff home. Could also be teachers that may not be returning, whether they're retiring, whatever, that those boxes can go to some of those classrooms as well. There will absolutely be, I continue to talk about, with my chamber groups, with Kiwanis, with the different groups, that please be on the lookout when we're ready for a call. One of the things we just put out is a place where teachers can put, I am interested in additional help to close my classroom, because we've also heard that some teachers, it's a very personal thing and they don't necessarily want someone up in all of their stuff because it's theirs. So we are looking at collecting that data about who would like help, and then we'll reach out and can help partner with them. Again, doing things like when we're ready to move libraries, that may be, again, perhaps a day that it allows for some community involvement. We also need to be careful about what we're having non-employees who are moving district materials and kind of the whole liability and scenario that works down that road.
And the moves are, on the last break, I went and visited Black Mountain and Horseshoe Trails, and they talked extensively about having to move everybody internally around. Are those moves also being covered by this moving situation where, let's say for Horseshoe Trails, all of third grade is going to have to go this way, and then others, sixth grade will have to move here. So are those inter-school moves being addressed like that?
So as I understand, inter-schools would be intra-schools. Either way, on the school note, they're going to continue to handle those as they do every year in terms of teachers get moved from a classroom. So that will not be a separate, our moving company is coming in to really move you from here's your classroom here and we're moving it to this other site.
Yeah.
Not intra. If they're staying within the same school, that'll be handled through the school and through our department. Correct.
Yeah.
Well, and they're already doing it. I mean, we were at Sonora Trails, and they were already moving some stuff around. So, I mean, that's even already in motion. Sorry, but, I mean, at least they're being proactive.
And let's see, the other thing that, like, Black Mountain is like really old and it's got some really old like teacher desks and equipment like that. What's the plan of getting like some of the newer stuff like from Lone Mountain and all that over there so that we can replace some of these teacher desks that don't have drawers? I've had ones of those.
Yeah, no, this is part of the overall plan. The moving company in June for the initial move of all the classrooms to get them ready. Then principals already have a template for requests as they're going through of work they would like to see done that maybe we initially can't get done while we're doing all the initial summer move. But during first semester, they are like, wow, these kindergarten chairs are from like 1994 and Lone Mountain has new ones. So there's actually a document that they go on and we prioritize it. And then we were looking at having the moving company potential, or if we have some other families that we can who own moving companies, but this moving company come back out a second time and having that list of, okay, these items out of the library need to be shifted here, they need to be shifted here, these chairs need to go to this school and just do a rework, because part of using our resources wisely is knowing what we have and not letting it sit and just sit and rot away or not be used. So if we do have resources that we need to move, that's kind of part of our.
And this company is also proficient in terms of kind of recycling and we might even get some.
That's the other big piece of it is the disposal. They're experts in how to dispose, recycle those products. So it's kind of a full one-stop shop for us. And it's also a place where they do things such as if we do have the not smart boards, but the view boards that follow the teachers, they're able to take those off. We're going to install those on carts. They can do all of that work. So it's a one-stop shop, so we can make sure it's set.
One last thing. We have talked about the ESAs. Have we figured out a way that we are still going to be able to start getting some of that? Are we into that yet? Have we figured that out?
So just in our extensive conversations with some of our families who are using them, we charge. So if they want to come take our ECS classes, they take care of their own reimbursement through ESA. So we can say, so for example, if we wanted to say that ECS is offering a writer's workshop and it's $50 for CCUSD students, it's $500 for non-CCUSD students, they can pay the $500 through their ESA voucher. So in that way, yes. In terms of some other systematic tuition reimbursement, I don't think we're going to touch that ever.
Yeah, I think that's part of the moving at the right pace and evaluating, and especially if we're moving some of the ECS services down to Lone Mountain. That's the initial step, just like kind of the initial move of schools. And then we just have to be wise. I mean, with special education, we know we have that need, and we know we've already piloted a program. But I think that's part of that next talk about if this preschool does take, okay, how else are we going to expand these services?
Any more questions? Thank you all. I mean, there's a lot of moving parts to this building transition, and we all appreciate the information and the update, so thank you. Item 4.5, governing board committees.
President Busby, members of the board, I will turn this over to Member Moore. This was his item here, but we've got board committees. I know for me, some of the things that I was interested in finding out is what the board is looking for in terms of the why, the what, the who, and the when. So I appreciate this, and I will turn it over to start with Member Moore.
All right, thank you. See, I actually read what you sent. So with that, so I want to start with the capital raise just because it's more my wheelhouse. I'll defer to other members to hit on the other committee. But the viability to the capital raise committee really is what is the purpose and goal? Address ongoing budgetary challenges and lack of override bond support. Explore alternative funding streams that reduce reliance on taxpayer approvals. Strategize long-term financial sustainability for programs, facilities, and staffing. Engage community, state, private partners in supporting CCUSD's vision. So that is our why. What? Expected outcomes. Deliver a roadmap of alternative funding opportunities. Corporate sponsorships, grants, naming rights, etc. We can explore a lot of different things, and I think we'll find creative people that can help us. Identify district-wide capital investment priorities. We'll flip some pages. I'll hit on some of those. Present specific fundraising campaign recommendations, develop a community engagement strategy, and create financial models for proposed initiatives. Who? Committee composition. Obviously, having a cabinet member, admin staff, community members, business leaders, parents, PTO, boosters, all would be ideal profiles to help in this committee. When? I'd kind of rough some timelines just to give some guidance. May through June, establish the committee, the goals, and identify the candidates. August through October, strategy, outreach, planning. October, November-ish, present some recommendations to the board. Fall, execute, viable options, rinse and repeat again. Because I definitely think the capital can be an ongoing thing. And again, the goal by being board-led is complete visibility to the public, and we can, obviously use the videos as kind of a push to get in front of people of, hey, listen. So I think this is more public-facing and maybe can open up. If you turn to the second page, I give two scenarios of kind of targets of what we're looking for funding. It should come as no surprise that the sports facility improvement is a necessary outcome. If we're just shooting for the moon, it's about a $1.7 million investment. And I use the word investment in the field because it creates some opportunities. And some people might be, oh, it's just sports. No, it's bigger than sports. If we look at Cactus Shadows and enrollment, part of our enrollment challenge, especially in going and visiting some of the other districts, is sports. Students like sports. And this isn't just for football. This covers track and other viable. I think volleyball was included, if I'm not mistaken, tennis. So it really kind of hits all of the spectrum for sports for Cactus Shadows. And by doing that, A, it attracts students. B, there's also some opportunity to put dollars into the local economy because there are professional sports that would take advantage of our repurposed fields. I.e., we already know that potentially soccer would be the National Soccer League would be interested in coming up here and taking advantage of our field if it was adequate. Obviously, we create a beautiful ambiance if you come to a night game. So again, there's some opportunities there to generate revenue. Also with that, we get that would be the gate as well. So when we give up our facilities, we would get money, and that money could go into the conditioning and maintenance of the field as well as additional revenue for the district. So again, that's one. And then two, I'd like to call it Ryan's $40 million wish list. And oh, he's the one that delivered this. So if you read through this, it's a very hefty, but it's just the needs throughout time. I mean, it's not an all due today thing, but putting some of these things out into the world, it's amazing what can happen because some of these items you look at and go, hey, those are expensive, but then magically they get fulfilled. And I think the more that we talk about these things, the more opportunity would be for the district to be blessed with some of these things that they need. So again, this is just a quick overview of kind of the starting point. So the goal would be the committee would get those 2 points and come back with, hey, we could, and obviously with the cabinet's guidance, what are some of the priorities, especially on the wish list, the now, the need, So we could take some of those, tackle those, and have that group kind of facilitate some ideas in helping generate those funds to get those items, or, like I said, put us a field or facility down so that we could increase our enrollment.
I think we're going to be doing this a little bit. Help me with the who. I've got the categories. What are you envisioning in terms of number of community members, number of business leaders, parents? What is the size of the group that the board is looking for?
Well, I think that's the wonderful $1 million question is, we know that, especially at your last breakfast, some community members raised their hand and said they were willing to participate. I think we have one in the audience right now. But I do know a mayor was open to being involved in a committee as well. So I think it's whoever wants to play in the game. Do I have a set number? No, because I don't know who all wants to play. And I think we just have to have, an open mind. The idea is the criteria. Here's a good mix that's going to give us perspective. If we can get X amount of people in each one of those, I think it's going to help us move that needle. But I don't have a set number. Do you want one? How about a group of 10 people? Sure, 10 people. No, 10 total. Just let's start.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6 categories. At least
I know.
2.
Let's go 12 then. Make it a nice even number.
Well, PTO, you got to take 1 from each school.
That's fine. Then.
That's why I want your guidance.
So, got 5.
Well, the odds.
Is this just volunteer? Hey, I want to be on this, or is there some kind of selection process?
Well, I think right now, given the fact that this room is empty, I think it's kind of a little bit different in the selection process. So I think the reality to this is that we want to see who wants to participate. We've had a lot of people say, hey, we want to help, so let's challenge that with this committee. I mean, I would love to deliver Superintendent Dolezal finite, but again, I'm looking out here, and, wow, there's not even enough for a committee. Well, unfortunately, the board cannot be a facilitator, so it would have to be the cabinet. So I'd probably defer to the guy to my right over here because he's the finance guy. It's your wish list, buddy. But I would start, obviously, cabinet would be a good facilitator in leading it. And then, again, I think the question comes out to, in our circle of network, who all could get some people that want to participate. Like I said, we might have one in the back.
Maybe you just cap how many total.
I think if we go with, let's just aim for 12 and see where we land. Something is better than nothing.
The business nonprofits and stuff. I can't.
So that was the Desert Foothills Leadership Group.
Yes.
Yes.
I knew leadership, but I wasn't sure what the rest of it was. A lot of those are kind of movers and shakers doing, I mean, they do fundraising. They've got a lot of community outreach. Do you, in your just quick, you don't have to answer now, but be thinking, do any of those come to mind as somebody who might be?
They might. Again, what that group talks about, it is the nonprofits in the area is really that group. What they talk a lot about is that they're all going after the same exact people, which is difficult. So are they great people with good minds that I would want to be involved in things like this? Sure. But in terms of that, again, we talk a lot in that group about how they're all trying to go after the same people, and how do they do that better as a group? How do we potentially do that as a group, not necessarily just this nonprofit, this, separately. So
that would be a viable source then.
Yeah, or yeah,
Well,
or
no, because
Jan.
you're going to get, if everybody's going after the same pot, right? And that's what we're, right now our same pot is parents. We go to the well every time. That's the only well we got. Kiwanis is amazing, so we have other points, but the pot. So the point of this is to try and see we've been fishing in the same pond. Is there some other areas? And again, there's companies that may not even be down the street, that may be 100 miles away, maybe a little further away, because they have corporate ability. So the question just becomes, there's a network. And yes, I already have some things moving. Like, this isn't at zero right now. I'm working with a couple of private equity firms in Arizona to curate. They've done some stuff with CCAP. They've done some other things. So I'm already having conversations and seeing what I can field from outside of our domain. But again, I just want to get this moving in the public side of it, because again, as a board, we haven't really pushed hard in supporting the district, and this is the first move of us doing some work to push. Yes, there's some burden on the cabinet, but I think it's a mutual win if we can open up a couple doors that generate additional revenue for the district. And I would say, I know you want aces and flushes and this fully defined, but I think have a little bit of flexibility, treat it as a startup, and as long as we're taking forward steps and movement, we're going to get to an outcome that benefits the district. So,
Janet, I think you had a dinner where we all invited a community leader. Yeah, very first in here. It was like a workshop, kind of informing people of CCUSD. And I felt like that had probably a lot of really good contacts. There's just that.
I mean, definitely the breakfast circle, you have a...
For sure. And please know that as your committee, I just want to make sure we're going to do what you want to do. So that's the impetus of the questions.
My goal is very simple. I want to get the district some funds. At the end of the day, it's very simple.
Were you talking about the partners breakfast? Those?
Yes.
Yeah. Why do, this is kind of a rhetorical question, but why do those businesses show up to every one of those breakfasts? Like, what's their, because they get 10 seconds to introduce themselves.
Well, one, I'd say they care about education. Two, I would say, let's be honest, some of them want our business when the business is to be had. And ultimately, a lot of them are former parents or current parents, again, who goes back to, they care about CCUSD and they want to see it do well. And they're interested in what information are we going to put out so they're in the know.
Right.
Any other questions?
Is there anything else you need to expand on so that there's a clear understanding?
Is it not clear?
No, it's clear. I'm just saying, is there something else maybe bouncing around in your head that might be a little nugget that would be useful?
What are you looking for?
I don't know. I'm just asking the question. I have
No, I mean, at this point, it's just about taking action. Like, one step in front of the other. We get moving and we get people interested and people start talking. It creates, like, our biggest point right now after everything that's gone on is we need fuel. We need momentum. We're a little dead stick right now and we need some momentum. So if we can get some things going, get some wins in, the district starts to move and thrive. And I think between what was talked about tonight and the work that the cabinet's done so far is leading in that point. This is that additional win in the sale that they need. So,
For this agenda item, is it just the one committee, or because I think we approved more than
you
one,
approved
right?
two. So the next is bond and override, and I'm happy to turn that over to you and member Fortney. I'm just throwing it out there. Not my wheelhouse, friends. I'm really good at this side of the house. The other side, I'm going to tee up to you guys.
Let's start with this guy first.
Well,
He's not on the spot. I told him last week.
there's a couple things about this that I thought this would be a good time to kind of get my understanding of what was going on, because we've been here. I've been here this is my 5th year now, and we've done a bond and we've done an override, and we never had a board appointed committee for it. So I'm not sure what the purpose of this is outside of what is normally done. Can somebody explain to me how the process has worked the last 2 times when the committee came to us and said, we want to do a bond, we want to do an override, and we voted, and then the action pack took it from there. So I want to know what the difference is now. What do we need to do so we're not redundant? Or I guess that's my first thing, because right now, I looked to see when we needed to let these folks know that we were doing this, and it's like next week. So we have no time. So I think that needed to be. I guess that somebody needed to know that beforehand, but May 8th for that. So I put that to Superintendent Dolezal. The response was, we definitely don't want to do it next year because we know what that would look like. So now we're talking 2027. I hope that there is still a Department of Education in 2027. I hope that there are still public schools in Arizona in 2027. But given that, my question still stands. What do we need this committee for that wasn't being done before by another committee that we didn't have to deal with? We could contribute if we needed to, but didn't do it.
So you're on a part of it, and again, we may decide that we're not going to do this committee now with these new information. But the point to the committee was, when I offered it, is we were in a different spot in conversation. There was a lot of momentum and a lot of people talking, number one. So first and foremost. Two, there was several conversations from the board about a bond and an override. No action, just conversation. So the point to the committees that I listed, and there was more than one, is I threw a ton out at you guys to see, what will get people's attention, what will get people to engage, what is the board willing to look and understand, and what does the board want, what does the cabinet want, and how do we move the district forward? Back to the bond and override. The premise of it was, in order to get it done, and especially watching some of the mechanics that took place, is by having a committee and getting people engaged, you can go and understand, to the point of that email that we all read on Friday, we would have a better understanding of where the gaps, if you're doing the work ahead of time, and again, we're late, so I hear you there, but if we're doing the work ahead of time, we can better understand what is the viability. We can have community outreach and understand where's the rub and friction. Again, yes, politics play, but at the end of the day, you can get around certain things if you understand what is it a lack of information, knowledge, understanding what is the pain points that keep us from moving forward. So that was the premise of the committee. Now, the board can choose at this point. We could recall and just kill this committee altogether and run one committee and see how we do. I think everything's fair game. What I was trying to do, too, was not make this a point of dictatorship where I was coming in and just shoving an agenda. It was, how do I create a collaborative environment where we can work together and actually do some things that benefit the district and help the cabinet. So that was really kind of the goal of the whole thing. Does that answer some of those questions for you?
Well,
I know Bill has to speak to the actual other piece that I don't know about.
I got that part.
Okay.
So can we speak to how it's worked before, from its inception with Ms. Rainey and the people that did her stuff, coming to the board and saying, we want to do a bond, we want to do an override. What is the process that happened there?
So I have never been a part of that process.
Okay.
So number one, it would be working with a group instead of being a board committee. It would be a superintendent's committee, a cabinet committee, whatever we wanted to call it. But it would be a district committee that's not the board. Again, I imagine doing much of the same research that a board committee would have done. However, the board committee would have been open meeting law, would have been public, all of those, what goes along with being a board committee as opposed to a superintendent's committee, because I think the same type of recommendation would ultimately come. When is the right time? So I don't think the research or anything like that would have been different. It would have been how that is done correctly. It is public. It is published agendas. It's open meeting law. So that to me is the big difference.
So it wouldn't
So
be a
it-
redundant thing. We wouldn't have.
No,
that
we would
board-
not run
that
we would
board-
not run two.
Yeah.
No, I would not want to run two separate things. It would be that committee who is doing the work that has been done before.
Gotcha. Okay.
And just to expand it really quick, Member Fortney, is the goal behind that is, yes, the cabinet can do a lot of these things, but a lot of the feedback from the community was transparency. Not that anything's being done, but putting it all on the table and bringing everybody along for the conversation and journey creates, people coming in and call to the public, which, when we get good topics, we get a lot of call to public. So there is some of that thought process, at least from where I was coming from, is how do you open it up and say, stop saying we're not transparent. Here we are. Stop saying the board doesn't have a committee. Here it is. Stop saying this. Here it is. You want to come talk? There's the mic. Talk. I think that's the part really kind of for me when I listen to what's going on in the community. How do we move the needle? This is the why. So do I want to do a committee? No. Like, we're going to have more meetings and we're going to do this all the time. Like, I got it. We all have to, but I do think it takes some of the burden of what we saw and some of the things we do where they come in and say, well, you didn't tell us.
Right.
You're doing something when that's really not the case. They're doing the work, but this just kind of pushes that to the forward and everybody can be more involved in it. So I
Gotcha.
think that's kind of,
No, that's okay. And I think I just wanted to get clear what the expectation was, because I know what had happened before, and this seemed like another step, which I didn't think was necessary. But if it's going to replace that, and then that drives what the PAC does, that's all fine and good. So I still think it would probably be a good idea to have a committee that is made up of a lot of the people that have been saying that they want to talk, they want this thing. Put your money where your mouth is. Come on out and let's knock on some doors. Let's make some phone calls. Let's figure out how we do it. But before then, understanding what we need to do, what the district needs, and talking to the people that are involved. So we would definitely need, similar makeup of what's going on here in this capital raise committee. We definitely would want a lot of community members and a lot of parents. I've talked to companies that would be willing to help us at what they say is reasonable prices, so I hope so, run these things like they should be run. I've talked to a lot of former parents, board members, people that have been involved in this district for a long time that are really excited to come out and be on a committee that's going to do this. So I'm good with doing this. And as far as when, well, I don't know now, because 2027 is a hell of a long way off.
Well, and Member Fortney, again, this was based off a comment you said,
Yeah.
and I'm not necessarily in disagreement. However, this committee might be. I don't know that. I know I listed several of the concerns. Off cycle, I hear you. But the latest number actually today, 55,560 registered voters in our area, $2.12 per just for the mailing ballot. 2 towns are not going out for anything. So where is that cost left? If that's all us, that's 119 right there. Then another $2.12 for every household to mail the information packet to. That's not going to be 55,560. It's going to be, if it's 50%, which is an average of 2 voters per household, it's anywhere from maybe 50 to 80 additional $1,000, based on where that shakes out. Other costs that aren't, they are just what they are. It's $1,000 to the county for every measure that goes on a ballot. So if it's one, we can all do that math. Those are the known costs of running an election. Some unknown costs that the county shared with me there's a printing cost. It's a company they use. They bill us for the printing. If we're the only one that's printing anything, that's all us. Then there's a translation cost. So that's involved. I know. So those are some unknown costs. then in research, I know we still got a pack that's out there and is ready, I think, to work. But in conversation I know they've talked about the PAC needs $300,000. Like that's a target they're shooting for in terms of running an effective campaign. I'm fairly certain we don't have that now. How long do we need to actually get to something like that, and does that provide time for those things? So I mean, these are all questions,
Right.
that we have in terms of when is the right time to go out. We know we're in a budget crisis. A couple $100,000. I don't know where that comes from.
Gotcha.
So again, those are just some of the questions. Again, what board context do we have in terms of leadership and political clout that we need to get on our side, quite frankly. I'm thrilled. Mayor Morris has jumped on board, so we'll take what we can get, but we need more. Yeah. And what does that look like, and where do we go? So those are just some of the questions. I think it's incredibly important that everybody on this board is behind it, not just in a vote publicly, but also privately all the time. I don't know where everybody sits, and I'm not asking you that because we can't ask anything like that now. So but these are thoughts that go through my head in terms of, again, when is that right time? When is the best time? I think we really need to focus on doing what we're doing right now and doing it well. Mm-hmm. So is there the time and energy from the small group of people that we have in the district in order to both do the consolidation, the closing of schools, and do that well, and an election on top of that? Those are some of. That's what I tried to share on Friday. I don't know if that came across well, but that was what I was trying to share with you on the update.
Well, that will have to drive how this committee then works. So we'll go from there, I think. But start reaching out to people, seeing who is interested, and then getting something together so that we can be prepared in 2027. And they don't do they do some special elections in May, but I think that has to be already known already, right? And then you could jump on that, but I think otherwise no. So that'll be.
Yeah, and I think they're also working towards school elections have to be in November.
Yeah.
Is working that way. So one of the things I see is putting out a call to the public. So a description. I don't know if you've got a more detailed description, or I can put something together. Okay, putting out a call to the public, to our parents, yes, because we need them, but also to all those other groups that I belong to and that we belong to as a school district in terms of, hey, this is what we're putting together. If you're interested, please reach out, and then kind of coming back.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, item 5, adjournment. Is there a motion?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned, and it's 8:14.